Hi, I'm Anne Russell again. This is chapter 12 of the book, and I'm actually outside in, I don't know, well, in Mariba, where it's very cold. As you can see, I'm wearing a jacket and a scarf, which is unheard of in Cairns. We're at a military muster, and my husband is very interested in military vehicles and what have you, so also, we've got the dogs right around. This is our camp, so if you hear any dogs barking or any people yelling out, just ignore it. So, chapter 12, Seth gets lost. Both boys were hyperactive, Seth more so. In my innocence at the time, I was unaware that it was a diagnosable condition. Living in a remote area made everything that little bit more difficult insofar as medical management. I let slip about my concern for the boys when my mother was visiting. As soon as it was out of my mouth, I knew it was a mistake. She was not tactful and declared loudly and with great authority that my boys had so many problems because I smoked when I was pregnant with them. She had no idea what I had done. She wasn't even there when I was pregnant, so I'm not quite sure what she thought. Anyway, I'd given up smoking as soon as I knew I was pregnant with Mick and hadn't taken it up again after that. So this blaming seemed to be a pattern with her and was probably the origin of my overdeveloped sense of responsibility and guilt. When Mick went to hospital with a stomach virus when he was 6 months, she said it was because I didn't wash the dishes thoroughly. Regardless that her claim was not true, I was hurt beyond measure that it was so important to her to find ways to blame me for illnesses and difficulties that my children experienced. And ironic that eventually had she been alive when they were diagnosed, she would have been right. I knew that this behaviour from her was related to her own mental health problems, but it did nothing for mine. Years later, my cousin told me that when my boys were little, he asked her for photographs of them, her only grandchildren. He said he was surprised that she wasn't able to produce a single one. She missed out on so much joy by not getting to know my boys. Holidays were demanding because when the boys were out of their usual routine, they became difficult to manage. This made it all but impossible to go on holidays. We only managed 2 real holidays in 18 years because of their meltdowns and their need for routine and structure. I recall Don saying in desperation, "Do you really think we're up to this?" After spending 2 harrowing hours searching a shopping complex in Surfers Paradise after 3-year-old Seth had wandered off. He was always darting here and there, looking at things, pushing buttons, touching. Just some noise in the back there, I couldn't see where it came from. He was always darting here and there, looking at things, pushing buttons, touching everything within reach, never walking when he could run and never remaining silent when he could talk or make some sort of noise. And when he saw something he wanted, life was not worth living until he had it clasped in his tiny fingers. Nevertheless, to me, he was an exciting journey, a free spirit of sorts. Nothing was ever ordinary when he was around. However, when they were both together, I was always on edge. Seth had become lost in the centre of Surfers Paradise, in the only shopping and entertainment complex where a walkway exited onto the beach. I was really scared, actually. If someone looked at me, what they would have seen was relative calm until they looked into my eyes. I could feel them getting wider by the minute. I think I must have looked a little like Don. Even Mick was starting to look like a deer caught in the headlights. Worst case scenarios popped into my mind, and after searching each shop thoroughly with the help of the staff and hearing notice after notice come over the loudspeakers from centre security, I could feel myself falling apart. Silverside became the focus of my attention. I was obsessively thinking about the Silverside that I'd cooked the night before we went on holidays. I think it had been the idea of falling apart. Don prefers corn Silverside cooked until each strand of meat separates. I was starting to feel as though parts of me were falling off, separating, and until I found Seth happy and healthy, I would continue to fall apart until there was nothing left. We eventually all had to conclude that Seth had left the complex. He had either departed under his own steam or he had been abducted. I could so easily imagine Seth in the hands of a predator because he was such a good-looking little boy and so friendly. He had no comprehension of stranger danger whatsoever. He would go with literally anyone. Then, of course, there was the beach and the water and so many hazards for a little boy with no concept of fear. Don and I agreed that it was time to call the police. We were all standing in the small centre office. With shaking hands, I took the phone from the security officer and dialed 000. Before I'd finished the first sentence, the person on the other end asked if my child was missing. Apparently, an officer had picked up Seth outside the complex after a kindly woman had called them. She had found him wandering by himself down a side road outside the centre. He had spent the last hour or so at the station entertaining the officers by sitting in the police car, riding up and down the highway. He was allowed to push the button that made the lights flash and the siren blare. He was deliriously happy, not missing us at all. He had been given biscuits and soft drink and was having the adventure of a lifetime. And this was the last time we went on holidays. There was only so much we could take. It was interesting when we found out that Seth was at the police station. Mick and I ran down the streets of Surfers Paradise toward the police station because I thought it was going to take too much time for Don to get the car and drive down. And we ran to the police station, and there was Seth. He was, if I recall rightly, he was sitting on a desk, absolutely in his element, with everybody sort of talking to him and so much attention, and he was just so beautiful. But yeah, oh man, if it wasn't a meltdown, it was something scary like that was happening. In year 2 at school, his teacher identified a speech problem. With the assistance of a therapist and his own determination, likely to be perseveration, he succeeded in returning the first consonant of each word to its proper place. It is tempting but impractical to cite all the bizarre experiences, strange events and joyous successes we experienced over the years before the boys reached puberty. Nevertheless, one thing that stands out in terms of awkward humour that is now a Russell family tradition, in our questionable wisdom, instead of gently correcting pronunciation errors, Don and I, mainly Don, usurped them and integrated them into our vocabulary. It was quite stupid and singularly unhelpful to the boys, even though I did tell them that the correct words, we still used their first attempts and have done so now for the last 30 years. We tried very hard to be good parents, but in this one thing we were less than virtuous. For example, I loved talking to the boys and telling them little facts, explaining things, answering their questions. But when it came to the improper use of language, we just could not help ourselves. There are a few stunning examples of our idiocy. It wasn't just about Seth's speech problem. It included strange connections they made with things. For example, Mick used to call watermelon happy birthday. I don't know why. He only did it a couple of times, but it was so cute. Helicopters became ogga-oggas. Veranda became veranda. Chips were erps. Mick became wawa. Cold water from the fridge became doggy water, and grasshopper was arse-hopper. Don still calls chips erps and cold water doggy water, and with quiet grace, 34-year-old Mick still answers when Don calls him wawa. I have my 37-year-old Seth listening to this right now, laughing. I might make that the end of this video, and we'll go from, chapter 12. We'll do the rest of it in the next video.